I'd like to call the special call meeting of the South San Antonio Independent School District Board of Trustees to order. The time is 6:01 p.m. Michelle, please call roll call.
Mrs. Angelino Seguin.
Here.
Mr. Luis Ibarra Jr.
Here.
Mrs. Linda Longoria. Mrs. Leticia Guerra. Here. Mrs. Connie Prado. Present. Mrs. Helen Mandel Prather. Here. Mrs. Elda Flores. Present.
Thank you. Dr. Saavedra?
Yes, ma'am. I'd like to call Mr. Scott Lallman, and you will lead the Pledge of Allegiance, Texas Pledge and prayer.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible. Father, we ask you to keep the students, parents, teachers, staff, and board of trustees under your watchful eye and guide them in everything they do. We ask you to watch over us as we work to come together and educate the students of South San Antonio ISD. We ask for your guidance here tonight to help us make decisions that are in the best interest of the students of our district. Amen. Call to action. All students will enjoy successful education experiences to empower them to make decisions and enrich their lives for the future it creates.
Okay, the board would now like to go into closed session pursuant to Code 551.071, 551.072, 551.074, 551.076, 551.082, and 551.0821. Discussion concerning personnel matters pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.074. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't have officer escort you out. That's it. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Another Trump.
The board is now in session. We are at the discussion and possible action items. Number 1, discussion and possible action to approve the termination of Chapter 21 probationary contract. Dr. Saavedra.
Ms. Ostergain and members of the board, this is the administration's recommendation that the board approve the termination of the Chapter 21 probationary contracts that were discussed with the board in executive session.
Do I hear a motion?
I move.
Okay, do I hear a second? Second. Okay, so a motion has been made by Mrs. Flores, seconded by Mrs. Prather.
Discussion.
Discussion. Mrs. Bravo?
I have some comments I'd like to make, and but I needed to ask Dr. Saavedra, I don't see Ms. Lopez here. Sorry. My question is, and I asked several questions in closed session, is out of all of the recommendations that are coming to us, how many are probationary? I'm sorry, how many are resignations and how many are retirements? Do we have any of those of the campus that are affected by the bilingual cluster and the school closures? How many resignations and retirements have we had?
Have we received? I don't have that in front of me.
Do you have any idea?
No, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I didn't bring those with me.
Breakdown. Okay. I think it'd be good to have that information. How many people since the announcement of the cluster and the closure have chosen to either retire early or have resigned?
We'll send the information to the board.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I'm going to make some comments here. My comments that I'm going to make actually will pertain to all three items 1, 2, and 3. So to save time, whatever I'm going to say is going to apply to all three, which is the termination of probationary, continuing, and term contracts. Since the board approved the RIF at the last meeting, which was the RIF on the bilingual cluster teachers and the RIF on the school closures, since then, employees have been waiting to find out what is their future, because of course there's a lot of positions that are not going to be filled for next school year, and teachers don't know what's going to happen. There have been some successes, some vacancies have been filled with those teachers, and I think the superintendent told us that there's about 20, there were 20 vacancies or teachers that needed to be placed from the bilingual cluster, if I'm not mistaken. Dr. Feather, correct me if I'm wrong. And then from the middle school, there was about 36. So I know the district has placed as many as they can in positions and vacancies of people that have said they're not returning or they're retiring. So the district's working hard to do that. But because of the RIF, these teachers who were under Chapter 21 no longer have a protection. Because as a Chapter 21 teacher, you are protected by your contract. In other words, you can't be terminated unless you have good cause. But now that the RIF is in place, both the RIF for the bilingual cluster and the RIF for the school closure, they don't have that Chapter 21 protection. So right now they're in limbo. They don't know what's going to happen to them. Tonight, the action we take tonight will say whether or not they're going to have jobs or not. And council explained to us, tried to explain to us that actually the RIF is protection of their job. Well, I beg to differ. A termination and a non-renewal, no matter what you call it, is a termination. You're gone. That's it. And although a RIF says that we're going to try and place you in a vacancy, there's no guarantee because you don't know who's going to leave and who's not. And then you have to go through an interview process. So will you be picked up or not? We don't know. So I cannot see terminating good employees that have been with this district for many years, that have good evaluations. And that because of this RIF that was approved by the board, now they're going to be without jobs. Because if there's no vacancies, they're not going to have a job. They're going to have to seek employment elsewhere. I can't, it's heartening and it's saddening to lose so many good employees because of the RIF. Now, I would be the first one to vote if this termination is based on performance. If the employee's coming to us because they've done something wrong, because the principal recommends that their performance is not up to par and they need to be terminated, then by golly, I'll step up to the plate and I'll vote on that. But to let go of so many good teachers, not only teachers, you're looking at librarians, counselors, other positions as well. So it's just an injustice we're doing to the teachers that have been here for many years. I don't think the RIF was something I think we could have held off on. District has done pretty good about placing a lot of these elementary teachers because of the bilingual cluster, but there's still some that are still hanging out there waiting to see if they're going to have jobs or not. So my comments are going to apply to also items 2 and 3, and for that matter, I cannot support this. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's important to point out that the program changes that the board approved last week for the program change for the bilingual clusters and the program change for the consolidation of schools produced 66 teachers, including nurses, counselors, and librarians, total 66 employees with Chapter 21 contracts that did not have an assignment. 66. As of today, 48 of them have received an assignment already, or have left the district. One or the other, but mostly have received an assignment. So out of 66, just a couple of weeks back, 48 have already been placed. And we're left with about we're left with 18 that of this day have not been placed. I've committed to the board and to these employees, we will continue to try to place them, and that effort will continue. We're only into the second week of May, and most of our resignations and retirements are announced throughout the month of May and into June. I anticipate that the greatest majority of the 18 will be assigned in spite of whatever action the board takes. Because we continue to work toward that. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Board members, it's open up for discussion. Is there anything that you'd like to say? Comments, questions, or concerns? Okay, I have some comments to make. So, as board president, I did vote for the consolidation of the elementary, the alternative, and the middle school. And the basis for that was because of low student enrollment. Now, due to the RIF that was voted last week, there were letters sent out because the staff did not know whether they had an assignment or not. So letters were sent out last week so that they can go through an interview process. And so that took place on Saturday. Based on the availability of positions, those have been filled. And now we're here for, currently what's on the discussion is the termination of Chapter 21 probationary contracts. And so what that means for the district is a probationary contract is someone who has been here 1 to 3 years. And so based on the RIF, they are being terminated, approved for termination. And so what that means is this individual will be receiving individuals will be receiving a letter tomorrow letting them know what the district is intending to do. So they have, they will know. They will know. They have been asking, I don't know anything, I haven't been told anything, but tomorrow they will know. And so they have some decisions to make at that point. Now, the whole basis of everything that is going on is because we have low student enrollment. And so that is nothing, why? That's something that we are studying as to why this district is facing low student enrollment. And I believe that this board is doing changes, is making changes, is asking the right questions, and moving this district forward. And so hopefully that with the discussions that are going on here, that as a board, that our focus is on the student outcomes. And so if we remain focused on that, our district, with the staff that we have, will flourish. Parents and students will come back to the district, but we have to make a change. And these are the necessary steps that are being taken. And so those are my comments. Thank you. Okay, so there is a motion on the floor. And so if you are in agreement, say aye. Aye. Those not in agreement, please say so.
No.
So the motion carries. Number 2, discussion and possible action to approve the proposed termination of continuing contracts. Dr. Saavedra.
Mr. Speaking, members of the board, the administration is recommending that the board approve the proposed termination of continuing contracts as discussed in executive session.
Do I hear a motion?
I move to approve.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, so a motion has been made by Mrs. Flores, seconded by Mrs. Prather. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Motion carries. Next one, discussion and possible action to approve the proposed non-renewal of Chapter 21 term contracts. Dr. Saavedra.
So again, members of the board, the administration recommends the approval of the proposed non-renewal of Chapter 21 term contracts as discussed with the board in executive session.
Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
A motion has been made by Mr. Ibarra, seconded by Mrs. Flores. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay.
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 Motion carries. Number 4, the administration is recommending that the board waive the GKD logo and allow the Mongoose Martial Arts and AOK Karate School to use one or more of our school district facilities. Dr. Saavedra.
Mr. Speaking, members of the board, the administration is withdrawing this recommendation. Both parties have withdrawn their request to use our facilities, so no requirement for action.
Okay. Number 5, discussion and possible action to approve campus attendance zones for the 2017-2018 school year. Dr. Saavedra.
Yes, ma'am. I would like to call David Abundis to come up to the mic, do a presentation pertaining to the proposed campus attendance zones for the 2017-18 school year. David, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Chair. Good evening, Madam Chair, board members. Again, I'm David Abundis. I'm going to have to do a presentation on the campus attendance zones what we're proposing for next school year. So, something that we would like to for us to remember and consider is the bilingual clusters that were discussed a few weeks ago. Also, the consolidation of Athens and Kaizen, of Kaizen and the consolidation of Athens and Kendrick Middle School. Also, so what I forgot to put there is, well, two things that we also considered was student safety and student safety and balancing the campuses. So those are the 5 things that we considered as we made this proposal. So I just want to review the bilingual cluster just real quick. If we recall, Price Elementary is one of those cluster campuses. So all bilingual students from Price, Carrillo, and Athens will be attending Price Elementary. Also, Benavides Elementary is another bilingual cluster. So all bilingual students from Benavides, Palo Alto, and Kindred Elementary will be attending Benavides Elementary. The third cluster is Five Palms Elementary. So all bilingual students from Five Palms, Armstrong, and Mala will be attending Five Palms Elementary. And Hutchins Elementary will be a standalone, meaning, and the reason we're having Hutchins as a standalone is there's enough ESL students at that campus to warrant it having its own campus. So those are 3 things that, this is one thing that we took into consideration. So I would like to go ahead and go into the elementary attendance where we're proposing for 2017-2018. Okay. But before I do that, I would just like to go ahead and just point out, so this is the current map right now. And it's slide number 4, number 5. So I would just like to point out a couple of things real quick. If you can look up to the board, please. I want to point out this yellow area. So these students currently attend Benavides, but as you can see, it's all covered with blue, which is Palo Alto Elementary. Okay. Another thing I would like to point out is this little section. Actually, that is, Ms. Ostigan, you are correct, that is BOA, that's the Baptist of America. Currently, these students are attending Hutchins Elementary. And I do want to note, this is New Laredo Highway. And just real quick, so the yellow, this is Athens currently, this is Carrillo, this is Price, and the blue right here is Kindred. Okay, so this is what we're recommending for next year. Now the black outline is the new attendance zones. If I didn't draw a black line, that means it's going to stay exactly the same. So what I would like to start off is with Carrillo's new attendance zone. So Carrillo's new attendance zone will be pretty much the merger of Athens and Carrillo, but only the area that's northwest of New Laredo Highway. Again, so the new Carrillo attendance zone will be the merger of Athens and Carrillo, but only the sections that are west of New Laredo Highway. Okay, so that leaves Price. So Price new attendance zone again is this black, the dark area here is the current attendance zone plus this little area, which is Fay, South Cross, that little section that's east of New Laredo. We didn't want any of our students crossing New Laredo Highway, so that way if they ever have to walk, we can just stay on this side of New Laredo Highway. So that's what we're proposing for Price Elementary. Kindred, and you can see this is Kindred right here. What we're proposing is that we take in the BOA, part of Kindred, and extending it to this section. So these students used to attend Carrillo, but we're asking to keep them on this side of the highway, will now attend Kindred Elementary. So for the most part, Hutchins stays exactly the same, except that BOA now attends over there. Benavides is almost the same, except if you recall, we had Hunter's Glen. Hunter's Glen will now be attending Palo Alto. And as you can see over here at the administration office, all 3 elementary attendance zones stay exactly the same. Okay, so what I'd like to do is just recap that real quick. So again, Carrillo Elementary, we're going to merge Carrillo and Athens attendance zone, but only the sections that are west of New Laredo Highway. Price Elementary, it's its current attendance zone, plus the students east of New Laredo Highway on Peabody, Lovett, West Gerald, South Cross, and Fay. And that was that little yellow triangle that was on top that I pointed out earlier. And exceptions, siblings are allowed to attend same campus. So if there's a 5th grader that's been exited from the ESL program but has a younger brother, sister, and kid who first is still ESL and still in bilingual program, those students are allowed to both attend the cluster school. The principal already understands that he or she will honor that parent's request. Okay, so I want to point that out. And I mentioned before, Hunter's Glen now attends, go from Benavides to Palo Alto. Kindred Elementary, again, it's its current attendance zone, plus students east of New Laredo Highway. There goes from La Violeta and west of Somerset, plus again the BOA. So that's what we're proposing for next year for the elementary attendance zones, okay? And again, all other boundaries pretty much remain the same. Okay? Middle school attendance zones. So that's the current zones, and they're by colors. Just look at the 4 colors: green, the blue, the yellow, orange, and the reddish one. That's the current zone. And pretty much what we're doing for the middle school is going back to about 2000, when the divide was I-35. So everyone west of I-35 is Dwight. Everybody east of I-35 is Zamora. And Kelly Air Force Base is still the divide Shepherd from the Dwight area. And that's how we're proposing the middle school attendance zones for the next school year. So just to recap that real quick. Again, Dwight Middle School, everybody west or visually north of I-35. Zamora Middle School will be all students east of I-35 or visually south of 35. And Shepherd Middle School stays the same, Kelly Air Force Base as the divide. Okay. So are there any questions?
Board members, are there any questions?
I do. The last presentation that was made, Mr. Muniz, I don't think you made it though, but I had a question about some students from Athens.
Sure.
There were about 20 students. Has that been corrected, or is that still the same?
So it's I think, I'm going to show real quick.
Because the whole idea was to have all of the Athens kids now go to Carrillo, and not split the families up between Price and Carrillo. And there was a group of 20 kids that were being left out, I think.
Well, what she had presented last time, she included this one street in the map, which is Gerald. But actually, if you look at the map of Thoroughbreds, we're actually recommending that all these students attend Price because this is New Laredo Highway. We want to keep our students, make sure they can make it to school safe. So we want all these streets. And there's a little section right here to attend Price Elementary. And you're right, it's about 20 students. What was presented last time was this street, Gerald. That little, it was like a very little section. It was just that. We're actually proposing all of this to be attending Price to keep them on this side of New Laredo Highway.
As long as it's all kept together.
Yes.
They just split up the families.
All of this right here, yes.
I have a question. Do we have if we use the current attendance right now, the current kid count, and do we have how it looks now with the new map?
As far as enrollment in each school, yeah, we have that information.
Like that you can present right now?
Oh, right. I didn't bring it with me.
Okay.
I do not, but we can be happy to say, we know what the enrollments will be, at least for projected enrollments for each
Projected
school.
enrollment. But if you don't mind, can I just interject real quick? So, I know all, can I interject?
You know what?
I don't know, but I know that, remember this year we had 3 elementaries under 400. None of our elementaries next year would be below 400. They're all would be above the 400 count.
We'll send you the projected enrollments by tomorrow morning. We do have them. We'll send that to the board. Related to that, in reference to projected enrollments, as it pertains to the middle schools, our pre-registration program has indicated that we actually might have more students at the middle schools right now for next year than what we first projected. So as you'll learn later in the budget discussions, when we come back in June to do the next workshop on budget, we most likely will adjust the total projected enrollment for the district because it impacts the budget as well.
So I have a question. I know you indicated that parents may request that the students go with the bilingual cluster for the students that are not in the bilingual.
Yes.
These, have parents been notified or they have to make the request on their own? How does that work?
So we have parent cluster meetings, and some kids have already been exited, but we have told parents that we will accept the students as a whole family. No, I mean, at this point, we've sent home cards to see what campus are going to go. So we'll be moving those children, but we have made that, every parent cluster meeting, we've made parents aware of that.
So the parents don't have a choice? So if one or two, if one sibling is in the cluster, everybody follows?
They're welcome to follow, yes.
They're welcome, so that
Yes,
means that
well-
the parent has to request it, or what? I just need some clarification.
Okay, on the process itself, we did tell parents that we will take absolutely everyone. So we will take the whole family as a group. If they perhaps have a fifth grade student who might have been exited from a program and they choose to leave, say, that student at perhaps Carrillo, that would be their discretion, but we are open to move the whole family.
Okay, so are we moving them, or are we sending a request, or are we, what exactly are we doing?
Okay, as far as, okay, we will,
So currently,
Yes.
I have a fifth grader who's exited
Right.
Gario,
right,
and I have a third grader attending Price, because that's the letter that they got.
yes.
Where is, or my fourth grader, where is my fifth grader gonna go?
Because they've been exited, they can remain at,
Let me interrupt. All right. Where any family that has a bilingual student assigned to a cluster and also has other elementary children not assigned to the cluster, we will notify that family and inform them that they may move transfer the child to the cluster school or let him remain. We will communicate that by letter to each of those families.
Okay, that's what I need to know.
okay.
So they have the choice.
Yes, so that they have a
They
choice.
can have a choice, that is correct. They have
Yes,
a choice.
I realize that.
Okay,
Yes,
so that's what I need to know.
yes,
Thank you.
okay.
Madam Chair, I have questions.
Okay.
I have questions regarding transportation, Judge Ceballos. I don't know if Mr. Abundis can answer me or not. The new elementary boundaries in the areas of the Lazy Acres by the Leon Creek and of the 5 Points area, I call it 5 Points, which is actually in Ms. Guerra's district, which is the Hoshak, Ilo, Ames, and Burgess, where it meets with Nogalitos, Zarzamora, Somerset. That's the 5 Point area there. Those kids probably will meet that 2-mile rule where you have to live within 2 miles of the boundaries to get busing. Will they be getting busing, do we know?
Let me respond to that. We actually have an agenda item for next meeting, that's the 17th, to discuss transportation routes, specifically hazardous routes, as well as discuss with the board a regulation that establishes transportation is provided if the student resides outside of 2 miles, but it will not be provided inside of 2 miles unless the board approves a hazardous route. We intend to bring recommendations on hazardous routes to the board next week on the 17th. And so that's basically where we are with that.
Because I think that hazardous routes is going to pertain to the kids that are now going to go from the Palo Alto area over to Zamora. Because the parent, I remember, came and spoke, and concern was that their child had to walk across that walkway to get to Kazan, and because they didn't have transportation, so they walked to school every day. So his concern was, I don't have a car, I don't drive, how's my child going to get to the school? And since it was not within the 2-mile radius, I think you itself had said that there's a possibility because of the hazardous rule there that they may be able to get busing from that part of the district.
Yes, ma'am. We will make the recommendation to the board next week.
Okay. Do we know how many additional routes we're going to have? Based on the-
That's
Until we present this report to the board next week,
Okay.
there's no way I can answer that question.
Okay, let me make sure that it answers all my questions. Let's see. It was mostly the 2-mile radius and then the hazardous rule. And also, will you present what the cost is going to be for the additional transportation?
We will be able to tell the board, if the board is asking the question, what does it cost to transport a child a mile? I mean, we'll give you cost breakdowns, if that's what you're asking.
Well, how many, yes, breakdown on how many more buses are we going to be needing?
Actually, there's going to be a reduction of transportation for next year.
Okay. Okay, and then I'll reserve the rest of my questions until next week's meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, board members, is there any other discussion?
Just one last thing. One of the things that I had brought up was identifying where alternative school students would be placed after this consolidation. Do we know that yet?
With Edgewood?
We are negotiating with a neighboring school district. We've not reached agreement, no one's reached agreement yet, but we're negotiating basically an MOU for services. It will be a neighboring school system.
Okay, so we'll know as soon as you know.
Yes, I guess, right.
Well, once we know for sure that the two districts can reach agreement, and I think we will reach agreement, we certainly will inform the board.
Edgewood.
For public comments being made, it's being disruptive, and if it continues, I will ask council to have you removed. This is your warning.
I made the comment and I'll remove myself gladly, but to answer your question,
And
Mr.
you
I'm sorry,
can
could you ask
speak,
lady
please.
to leave, please?
It's Edgewood, and I have it in black and white. So just so you know, since your superintendent isn't telling you, it's Edgewood.
Okay, board members, we have, do I hear a motion to approve the campus attendance zones for 2017-2018 school year?
I move to approve.
Do I hear a second?
Husband.
Second.
So a motion has been made by Mrs. Flores and a seconded by Mr. Ibarra. All in favor, say aye.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Motion carries. Next is work session, presentation of budget workshop number 3. Dr. Saavedra.
Thank you, Ms. Osterguin. I know Mr. Zamora is walking up to the mic, he's going to present this workshop. I'm going to let him do the presentation, and of course we'll respond to your questions. Zamora?
Good evening, Board of Trustees. So just to give you a little idea of what the thought process was when we prepared this, was we wanted to be able to show you where we were with Budget Workshop 2 and where we are today. So I'll do the presentation. So our 2017-18 budget summary, take a look. We have workshop number 2 with a total estimated revenues of $74.8 million. And our most recent numbers for this presentation are $73.7 million. There is a loss of revenues in the amount of $1.1 million. And our appropriations in workshop number 2, we had a $81 million appropriated, and workshop number 3, we have reduced that to $76 million for a difference of $5.2 million. As you can see, the surplus deficit at workshop 2 was a total of $6.4 million. Currently, with our estimates, we're at $2.2 million. So there's been a change in budget position of $4.1 million. This next slide is a little more detail as far as how we got there. So when we started Budget Workshop 2, part of Budget Workshop 2 was a list of proposed needs that was part of the $6.4 million deficit. As you can see, 1.1 was in the academic office, 200,000 was in the chief of staff, and when I say chief academic office, I mean the division itself, so that's all of central office, that's all of the campuses included. Same thing for the chief of staff, same thing for the CFO. The CFO office had additional needs of $256,000. Since workshop 2, we continue to work. We have identified additional needs in all 3 areas. The CAO division was $1.9 million. The chief of staff is $22,000, and the CFO was $1.2 million, almost 1.3, for a total additional needs of 3.2. The next items are the actual cost reductions. So for the school consolidation, we have been able to identify additional cost savings. So our cost savings at this point is estimated at $3.9 million. For the bilingual clustering, we're still at the same number of $1.2 million. And for for the 16. So also what we identified were other budget reductions. When we take a look at the current year's budget, we went through and tried to identify areas that we could reduce. And so we were able to identify for a total reduction of $4.6 million. We have included a proposed compensation plan, salary increase for the district, and that cost is at about $1.3 million. So when you add all those numbers together, we have a total reduction of expenditures of $5.2 million, which was on the previous slide. This next part of the slide is basically a change in position of our deficit. So we originally started off with a $6.4 million deficit. The change in appropriations, the reduction in appropriations was 5.2, changing our deficit to 1.1. But then when you take into consideration the change in revenues or the decrease in revenues of 1.1 million, our total new deficit is 2.3 million. This next slide is taking a look at the functional level of the budget. As you can see in workshop 2, we had total appropriations of 81.3 million, and currently we have appropriations of 76 million. And again, that difference will be the same. It is at 5.2 as far as the reduction in appropriations. The departments were tasked with trying to identify areas where we could reduce our costs. And so this is a list by division, centrally and campus-wise, on where we could find some savings for the district. So Chief of Staff had 2 areas. We had the police department with a savings of $97,000. Technology had a savings of approximately $32,000. Transportation had a savings of $84,000. The warehouse a savings of $26,000, almost $27,000. And then at South San High School, we had a savings of $240,000. Shepherd Middle School of about $300,000. Special ed between middle school and high school was $120,000. And then there was the teaching positions budgeted for last year that went unfilled that are $720,000 for a total savings of 1.6. When we discussed the consolidation of the schools, one of the questions asked by the board was how would we be able to put money back into the district and specifically into instructional programs. With the ability to cut our costs, we are able to put these additional funds into the programs that we presented at the first workshop, which included the early college expansion, which was approximately $560,000, additional instructional coaches at $457,000, the funding of the Health Science Academy for $160,000, and then one of the largest talk about areas of concern was class size, which the difference between staffing our campuses, our secondary campuses, at a 25-to-1 ratio versus a 30-to-1 ratio is a cost differential of $2 million. And so we're maintaining the 25-to-1, so essentially we're able to, we're picking up that additional cost. Pay increases for all employee categories at a cost of $1.3 million. This next slide is our TASB study. We utilize TASB to help identify our district-wide raises, which would be a 2% of midpoint for all categories. The total cost of the proposed salary increase, again, is $1.3 million. It does provide by the different groups or different categories. If you have questions, I guess in a minute we can follow up on that. This last slide is basically our budget calendar. In our budget workshop 2, we did have an earlier date for the June presentation or workshop. Given the fact that legislation ends at the end of May and could possibly go into closed session as they normally do, it was recommended that we move our budget workshop to June 21st. So if legislation is passed, it gives us time to get the appropriate information as far as the change in formulas, how it impacts our revenues, or if there's any legislation that requires us to do other programs or unfunded mandates that have historically happened. So we are recommending a June 21st date for the budget workshop number 4. July, there is no date set. If there is another workshop needed, we will be glad to bring that back to the board. August 2nd, we have our workshop number 5, which is basically going to be our final presentation. And then August 16th will be our regularly called board meeting, which we will adopt the budget and set the tax rate. That's the end of the presentation. I'll take it.
Board members, are there any questions, comments, or concerns? Mrs. Flores?
Yes, Mr. Sonora, on the slide where you have it's the impact of school consolidation savings, number 4, I have a question on the additional $2 million if maintain 25 to 1 class size at secondary versus 30 to 1.
Yes, ma'am.
How many teachers are we talking about, and are we only talking about the core area teachers?
So when we staff at secondary, there's a formula that most districts use that calculates how many teaching units you will have, and that is for both core as well as electives. So the difference, we use an average salary of $60,000, so that would be about 30. Sorry, too big of a number for me to
Yes.
my head.
2 million is a lot.
So it's about 34 units. 34 units, and this is both middle school and high school.
Right. But you're all also looking at electives.
Yes, it would include electives. And that's typically an average, because of course PE are going to have larger classrooms, band is going to have larger classrooms. So when you get the training on how to calculate staffing for secondary, it's an average where generally your core classrooms are maintained at that level. Other areas are at a higher level, but it's on average. So I wouldn't say every classroom is going to be 25.
Then I have a question for Mr. Saavedra. At the high school,
Yes, ma'am.
the kind of schedule that they're being used is the block schedule,
Yes, ma'am.
correct? And does that require more teachers than a regular schedule?
Well, when we implemented block scheduling for the first time, I believe last year, at that time, it did not require more teachers than were already at the high school. Matter of fact, we did a reduction of teachers at that time from the high school. So we were able to
And we
incorporate.
reduced 4 more this year.
I'm sorry?
We reduced 4 more this year.
You're right, you've been 4 more. So there was an adequate number of teachers already at the high school to accommodate the block scheduling.
Okay.
Ordinarily, to answer your question, ordinarily, block scheduling will require more teachers than a regular schedule. But like I said, since we were already staffed at a higher level at the high school, we were able to incorporate it without adding any more teachers than were already there, and still reduce it a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Guerra?
On the budget change summaries on slide number 3, in appropriations, you said that regarding school consolidation, there were additional cost savings added to them. Do you know what they were?
Mainly they were, so when we presented at workshop 2, we were using that same average salary of $60,000 per teacher. We now have information as far as who they actually are, as far as the teachers, the units themselves. Now they may fill a vacancy at another campus, for purposes of looking at that campus that is, has been consolidated, we were able to grab those salaries and use the actuals, which means we were under projecting on the salary calculation.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. So page 3, the budget changes summary.
Yes, ma'am.
So you have some 16, 17 budget reductions.
Yes, ma'am.
So that is monies that was not used, that is not going to be used for the remainder of this year.
It's money that were one-time expenditures that we were identified that we were able to, we did not need to budget for the upcoming school year. And it was by different department, at the department level.
Okay, so whatever was appropriated for this budget is being used, but it's being revisited and taken away for next year.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so what is that on the CAO part?
Yes, ma'am.
What is that impacting? The 1.7.
So when we look at the 16-17 budget reductions, it is also taken into consideration the consolidation and the bilingual. So that's why function 11, or in the next slide, is so high. Because it's not only taken into the department cuts, but it's also taken into consideration the consolidation.
So it includes salaries?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's all I needed to know. Thank you. Are there any other questions or concerns?
I'll wait till the next round if somebody else has any.
I do have a question. I always compare my workshop booklet from the last time to this one to see if there's any changes. This was a little hard to follow because the recaps are not, they seem to change. And let me just refer you to the 2017-2018 projected budget summary. Under workshop number 2, you show the estimated revenue of $74,881,240. And that actually, in budget workshop number 2, it had an estimated total revenue of $75,499,940, which is a difference of $618,700 less. Was that just a mistake in inputting, or is it actually less?
I'll have to get back to you on that. I don't have the other presentation with me, and I don't have the detail behind it. So if you have the presentation there and that's the number, then it's my error.
Okay, it's under workshop number 1, the first one we got. It actually showed the revenue $618,000 more than what you're showing for this third booklet.
So I
I'll
don't.
check the number.
So I'll have to go back.
Okay, that's
I
fine.
have not reviewed budget workshop number 1.
Okay.
When I got here, we were already on budget workshop number 2.
All right.
So I sort of just moved forward, unfortunately, and that's probably my mistake. So I'll go back and look at that.
So, but whoever did the presentation, they transposed the numbers from the first workshop to the second workshop, and the number that they transposed is different, so you might want to check that to see.
I can definitely check that.
Okay, and can you tell me the difference of $1,166,622? Why is that in revenue?
Which number?
The difference between workshop 2 and workshop 3
For the revenue?
for the budget summary, projected budget summary and the revenue?
So there was, so as mentioned, we'll be presenting our transportation recommendations at the next meeting. We have identified that we will be losing some revenues due to our transportation reporting in the amount of $300,000, as well as we found a discrepancy in our revenue projections from budget workshop 2 to budget workshop 3 on the actual calculation itself. So that's the difference between the 1.1 and the 300,000.
The actual calculation of what?
So in our numbers, so the template itself has many variables. So you got to go in there and put how many state comm kids you have, how many bilingual, how many special ed, and all those different factors change the amount of revenue we receive in total. And so there was some discrepancies within the first calculation that gave us the 74.8 number. And once we made those changes, it brought the revenue down to 72.7.
So it was based on the projected numbers that were inputted
Into the template, yes, ma'am.
into the template. Okay. So, and that's been corrected then?
Yes.
Okay. The next question I have is on page 5, which is the proposed department efficiencies.
And just to make another clarifying point on the difference in the revenue. So as we move through the budget process, we're always taking a look at our data. So when we run numbers, we're always updating based on the most recent data we have as far as attendance reports. And so those attendance reports change, they fluctuate from the last 6 weeks we use to the next 6 weeks we use as far as, and the smallest percentage change can deviate the revenue projection, to the amount of 500,000. So as we move forward, it may change again, because once we get to the final 6 weeks, we'll have our final report of what our attendance looks like, total percentages as far as ADA, special ed numbers, bilingual numbers like I indicated. And so that number could change again without moving our actual projected enrollment, just for future.
Sure, I appreciate that. Okay, so on number 5, page number 5, you've listed, of course, the department or campus. At the very bottom, you have something called unfilled teaching positions. Can you tell me what that is?
Yes, ma'am. My understanding is last year we budgeted an additional 12 teaching units that went unfilled this year, and so we are removing those from next year's budget.
Okay, and if you look at, and I've used my calculator, I totaled each section. Like you have police department, technology, and I totaled those 2, and then I did transportation warehouse, and then I did the chief academic officer. You're showing the total of $1,633,000 and 32, and if you add those 3 totals up, it actually comes out to $1,621,000 and 32. So there's a difference of $12,000. Maybe it was just an error in the calculation?
To be honest, I'd have to see the spreadsheet because it's all in Excel, and so it's all formulated. The only thing I can think of is there's an additional row in the spreadsheet that maybe I didn't pay attention to that was hidden, and maybe it had an additional item there that I can't account for, but I will definitely look at that and get back to you as far as the discrepancy.
And if there is a difference, you'll correct it for the next presentation?
Yes,
okay. All right, thank you. And then the other question I have is on the, Ms. Guerra was asking about the cost savings for the consolidation of schools. In the first budget booklet, and I know you weren't aware of that, it actually showed a savings of 3.1. And then in the second budget booklet, it has a savings of 3.7. And now on this one, budget booklet number 3, we're showing a savings of 3.9. And I'm sorry, you said it was because of an projection of salary calculations?
So I can only speak to Budget Workshop 2. So in Budget Workshop 2, when we went through, we used an average salary for every position that would be reduced. As soon as the board approved the actual consolidation, we went in and looked at actual salaries at those different campuses. So that increased the actual total savings because the salaries we were projecting were lower than what the actuals ended up being.
So you didn't use the standard $60,000?
Not for that, because at that point we had data that we could go back to.
So every campus was different, their averages were different?
Correct.
Okay, and so because of that, you were able to show a savings of 3.9. And I know this isn't minutia, but shouldn't the savings, shouldn't it be in black instead of red?
Well, for my purposes of showing that it's a reduction, I wanted to show it in red because it's a reduction of our overall appropriation. So again, you could do it either way, but for my purposes, I thought it'd be easier to show that these are what we're saving versus what we're spending.
Okay, that's fine. And then also you show in bilingual clustering a saving of 1.295. And I think originally the bilingual clustering saving was proposed at 1.1, and at one time it was at 1.7. So now it's gone down to 1.2.
Went down or went up?
Yes, because it was, I think Darcy would correct me if I'm wrong, it was at 1.7 at one time. That's what you had presented. You said originally it was 1.1 for the bilingual cluster, and then we had jumped up to 1.7, and then now it's at 1.295.
What was what did we present on workshop 2?
Okay, let me see, that was workshop 2, the 1.7. And so here on workshop 3, it's at 1.295. So what caused the decrease?
I'll have to look at it. I know when I first got here, we were using an estimated salary of 65,000. So it may have been that I didn't catch that piece and didn't reduce it to 60,000 when we changed all the other staffing and teaching units. And that could be the cause for the difference, but I'd have to go back and check that number to see.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Darcy, at the bilingual cluster presentation of March 8th, it actually showed a reduction of 18 teachers back then, because it was 59 teachers and then 41 teachers, so that was a reduction of 18. Has that number changed?
I believe it's 20.
Is 20 now?
It is 20.
Okay. And then under the needs proposed, the appropriations. Let's see, and that would be, it looks like the totals under the estimated total appropriations from workshop 2, they went from 81 million to 76 million. And then you show a difference of 5,272,000. Can you tell me so you're telling me that everything in red comes out to 5.2?
I'm sorry, let me get to that list. I'm sorry. So it's a accumulation of all the line items, so whether they're in red or whether they're in red or blue, it's the total of all the numbers together.
I think the coloring is kind of confusing. You have red, blue, black, you can't tell which is a saving, which is actually expenditure. So the 5.2 is what?
The 5.2 is the reduction of total appropriations. So our appropriations were 81 million. The
So
appropriations
everything listed here comes out to 5.2.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And like you said, I guess the big increase then was because of the salary, 2% salary increase.
Yes. Well, the reduction.
Well, it's, you're proposing a 2% salary increase, and that was not in the last budget workshop.
That was not in the last
Right.
one. So without that, it would actually only have a deficit of the difference between that and the 2.3. So we have a deficit of 1 million.
Okay, and then under state funding, loss of state funding. I have my booklet from the last workshop, and under the state funding, the projection was that we were going to lose, we were going to decrease because of student enrollment projected, Dr. Segura projected a loss of 457 students, therefore giving us a loss of state funding of 2.593720. So, and I just heard that the enrollment has not decreased, at least not as much as we expected.
And that is not reflected in this report.
Okay,
It will be reflected in the next report.
this one will be reflected in the next report.
The increase in enrollment that I just spoke about at the middle school, those numbers will be reflected in the next report. They're not, this report has been completed, so we did not change this one.
Okay, so you're telling me the 4.457 loss of enrollment is going to change then?
It's going to be most likely something less than that.
Probably maybe half?
I couldn't tell you.
Okay, so it'll be less than that.
It'll be less than that number.
And that's going to impact our state funding?
It's going to impact our state funding, that's correct.
Okay. All right.
And our expenditures as well.
Absolutely. Okay. I think that was about it. I do have a question on the proposed salary increase. That's here. It looks like the salaries, proposed increases are going to be based at the midpoint
Yes, ma'am.
if I'm not mistaken, like they were last year?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so that means that it's going to be widespread. I mean, you're going to have some employees, based on what I'm seeing here, some employees will actually get the 2%, some won't get an increase, because I showed here under teachers, librarians, and nurses, 14 will actually, it looks like $5, so they'll get 0 increase. Is it from the midpoint? Is that what that's it?
It's full increase to employees paid over the range maximum, meaning they're outside the box. So
So they won't get the $5 maybe?
yeah, basically, anytime we do pay raises, and we've done it in the past, this will be the same. The percentage increase is applied to the midpoint of that pay grade. And the closer you are to the midpoint, the closer you are to that 2%. The further away you are from the midpoint, the lesser the increase if you're over it, and the greater the increase if you're under it. There are some employees, not many left, but it gets reduced every year. There are some employees still that are outside the range completely. Those employees ordinarily do not pick up hardly any pay raise at all. It's either none to something close to none.
And those are the ones that are maxed out?
They're maxed out because they're outside. Now, what happens though, the reason I'm saying it keeps decreasing every year is as we apply salary increases, and employees have had a salary increase every year this administration's been here. As we apply that range increases. So the max will continue to increase. Last year was a 3% increase. This year's going to hopefully be at 2%. If not more, we come back and recommend more. So every year we have fewer and fewer employees outside the range.
Okay. Looks like there's not that many actually that will get less than 2% from the looks of this. Although in the manual trades we have 40 that will get maybe 0.5%. So I think it would be good when this, I'm hoping this comes back again, because this is the last time.
It's going to come back again. You know, one thing that the board can expect in the next workshop is this. We should have a more clear picture concerning state revenue, since the legislature will have hopefully completed their work, assuming that they don't go into special call session. We'll have that number. We will adjust the projected enrollments based on pre-registration at all levels. We've already have somewhat of a picture at the middle school, but we don't have that at all schools yet. And based on what we see, that 2% increase could remain the same for the next workshop, or might be increased. Again, depending on what we get from the state.
When we will hear from the state if they're going to increase our state funding or not.
The legislature is scheduled to end at the end of May, and at that point, soon after, we'll have months, maybe a week or so later, or sometimes even days later, and we'll have a better idea at that point.
I think for the purpose of the new board members, Elda might be familiar with how the midpoint range goes and so forth, but like Mr. Ibarra, Ms. Longoria, and even some of us that haven't been, that we're still here, it's still kind of confusing when you talk about midpoint, and then to be able to explain how is it that some are getting 2%, some aren't getting any, so I think an explanation of this would be good.
Yeah, the next workshop, we'll talk about the salary ranges basically, as to how that works.
Okay, all right. That's all I have, Mr. Zamora, thank you.
Board members, are there any other comments or concerns?
I think I had a couple. Hold on 1 second. Let me get out of the way. Okay, one of my first questions was kind of related to what Ms. Prado was saying. So on page number 2, she pointed out that there was a difference between workshop number 2 and workshop number 3 of $600,000 or a little over that, which would in turn affect the difference.
I'm sorry, which slide?
Number 2.
And there's a difference of 600, on workshop 2 and workshop 1, you mean?
Well, you have listed here workshop 2 and workshop 3. The difference between those two, 1.1.
Yes, sir.
If there was a mistake on workshop 2's monetary amount that you listed, that would in turn change the difference by $600,000, increasing that amount to 1.7, is that correct? If she's correct on that amount, then that would change the difference by $600,000.
No, so I think the number Ms. Prado mentioned was from workshop 1 though, I think.
Oh, was it workshop 1? Well, yeah.
Yes, and that's what you're saying. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
The workshop 1 booklet actually showed 75,499,940,000. This workshop is showing 74,881,240. So there was a difference of 618,700. And I know you're not familiar with workshop 1, so you're going to go back and check it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I can't respond to the workshop 1 numbers. I'll have to go back in and verify how we got that number.
Okay, my question would be is that if that amount is correct, and we do have the $600,000 difference from 1 to 2, then that would make this difference that you listed greater by that amount, correct?
So as far as workshop 1, workshop 2, workshop 3, where we're at, workshop 3 is the most current number with our most recent data that we've provided to our consultant as far as running our projections. So the numbers in workshop 3, again, they're all estimates.
But that's just, so then we can take that number and we can work off of that. It doesn't, the other 2 were just other projections that were used, and it's not necessarily going to change anything on our totals right now.
Correct. The numbers from workshop 1 or 2 will not change anything for our projection right now.
Okay, perfect.
So, I'm sorry if I may interject. So if that's the case, why even show the difference?
It was just to give y'all a comparison of where we were, workshop 2 to workshop 3, to try to answer that question as far as, so if I had just presented workshop 3 and stated our total revenue is 73.7 million, my natural question would have been, well, why did it change? How much did it change from last workshop? So I was just trying to provide that information up front to have the conversation on what the change was and how it changed.
And I think it's good. I think it's good, but if you're going to transpose numbers from one workshop to another, let's make sure it's the right numbers, but they haven't changed any.
Okay.
Let me ask, Doctor, can we just get an updated one for the next meeting?
Well, sir.
After you check workshop number 1?
Number 1?
It was the budget book number 1 that had the 75 million.
I understand that. So you want a comparison between 1 and the next workshop will be workshop 4. Are you wanting to compare it 1 to 4?
No, I just want the same slide, but I wanted to check the workshop 2 numbers to make sure it's
I
correct.
think she means, yes, that she would like workshop 1, workshop 2, workshop
But
3,
all
and
the workshops
then
in-
workshop 4.
Okay, so the next slide will have all the different projections we ran. And I guess if I misstated, I never intended to say that we transpose numbers. So again, the workshop 3 numbers is the most recent. So those are our projections.
That answers my question.
We are.
See, I didn't know if you were saying that there was going to be a difference because of that number, or if the workshop 3 numbers, that's the number that we can go off of.
That is our current working number. Again, the difference is just to show that it's decreased from workshop 2 to where we are today by $1 million. But in no way does it mean workshop 2 number may be right. Workshop 3 is our working number. That's what we're using. Until we change our ADA, based on our enrollment.
Yes, okay. So that answers my question. The next question I have is under transportation, the 7, I guess that's a reduction in bus drivers, 7 bus drivers, leading to $84,000 savings.
Yes, sir.
So that is what you're talking about is going to get proposed as a reduction in bus routes?
Yes, sir, at this point, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, at this point. And keep in mind that, the budget process is dynamic. It keeps changing every workshop, It's very possible that we might, by next workshop, say it's going to be 8 or 9 or possibly 6. Now, as we continue to refine the numbers, both in enrollment as well as state money and so forth, they're all moving numbers for right now.
Right.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to clarify that that's where that number is.
That's where it comes from, yes, sir.
Let's see here. So on page number 7, kind of going to that midpoint that you were talking about, and the outside the box person that you're referring to, what you're talking about, a person who's been with the district enough years that they're making the maximum amount in their category. You're talking about the midpoint for that person. Is that correct on that? Specifically on that one that is 14 positions that only showing $5 increase.
Okay, so in this case, these are, the category that you're talking about right now are teachers, librarians, and nurses, okay? And Monica, correct me if I'm wrong, as I explained this, but there are basically 637 employees that are these Chapter 21 contractors, teachers, nurses, and so forth, okay?
Yes.
14 of them are outside the maximum rate, no?
What that is there's 14 employees that are going to get an adjustment
Oh, okay.
in that category.
They need to be adjusted.
They need to be adjusted because they're off the market median. So what they're saying is they're broken down. So in addition to the 2%, they're going to get an extra $5. It's only 14 people. And so each category shows you that in like the next category where it shows administrative and professional, it ends up being at 2.1% after you apply the adjustments to those 20-something, is it 25 people? 26 people. And then there's one, yes.
Okay, did you understand that, Ms. Prado? We were given different information.
Yeah,
So Ms. Lopez corrected that.
right. So the,
So that you're saying that when you adjust those 14 positions,
They're getting the 2%
that they're getting the 2% plus?
Any adjustments that are needed. And every year we've been doing this, so you'll see, last year we had a bigger number. This year the number has really decreased because we have been adjusting according to the market median so that we can be competitive with salaries across the Bexar County area.
So that does not mean that 14 people will not get an increase?
That is correct.
That's what I want to know.
can I just ask, is there a reason why then under the percent of current costs, everyone has a percentage, 2%, 2%, 0.1, 0.3. Under those 14 people, should it not have said 2% as well?
Well, it's 2%, if they're part of the 637 count, it's just 14 of them are going to get a $5 adjustment.
In addition to?
Okay, so maybe you should have just left off the 0.0%.
What's the less than 0.01%?
The executive adjustment for all 14 totals $5.
Yes.
So we're talking about pennies of adjustment for 14,
Right.
for 14 people.
Yes.
It's less than $1 adjustment on average per person.
Right, that's why that is the
That's why
percentage.
those zeros
Yeah,
are
because
very
it's so
significant.
small. I understand. That's all I have on that portion. Thank you for that explanation, I appreciate that. Lastly, are the dates, I know that June 21st is, that makes sense because we want to wait until legislation, and we kind of figure out the state and where we're at. But the August 2nd and 16th, are those pretty tight or is that adjustable?
The August 16th, we will need to have because we have certain dates that we gotta adopt our budget and tax rate by. The August 2nd is something we could look at as far as a different date.
So let me interrupt a little bit. We don't have right now a budget workshop scheduled for July, for example. And it is possible, correct me if I'm wrong, JC, it is possible to do the August 2nd workshop 5, maybe the last week of July. We should have the numbers by then. and do that workshop in July, late July. And if the board wants to adopt their budget early, we could bring your final recommendation to adopt the budget August the 2nd instead of August 16th. I know the past board member have asked us to bring it as early as possible.
And that was what I was kind of alluding to, was try to adopt.
You know, the only thing that would possibly delay it would be, I don't know, like if the legislature wants to do a special call session and we don't get numbers, but that's not likely to happen this time, I don't think. You know, ordinarily we would be able to have the numbers.
I will have to check on the adoption of the setting of the tax rate. There's certain timelines that we got to hit that I just don't remember off the top of my head. So I will have to go back and check that to see if there's a conflict with moving that date up though. The adoption of and it's sequential. You got to do one before the other. So that would be the only caveat that I would make, that at this time I will need to check that and get back to you as far as can we move that up too far.
Okay, so maybe at the next, the June 21st, if we could come up with the one answer to the question, if we could move the August 2nd to July, and then move the August 16th to August 2nd. That's what I'm asking.
Okay.
Dr. Soto, I mean, when do we get the property values, the final numbers on that?
We do have the preliminary values, which we are using as well in budget workshop number 3's estimates. We should be receiving final values in July.
Okay. So if we do change it to July instead of August 2nd, we'll have those numbers as well.
And that was all I had on that. My last question is on page 3. At the very bottom, right before total new deficit, decrease in state funding. And what are we basing that decrease in state funding on right now? Is that the ADA or is that a decrease in?
So the decrease in state funding, again, a portion of that was due to our transportation information that we've been able to gather, as far as we will be losing approximately $300,000 in our transportation allotment, which is basically funded by the mile for eligible students. So the difference of that is based on our information as far as our attendance percentage, as well as all our subpopulation information that drives all our special funding categories like bilingual, state comps, special ed, gifted and talented, K. I think that's all. So all that fluctuates with whenever we change any of those numbers to say if we have mainstream population decrease or bilingual decrease or increase, it drives those numbers and moves them up and down. Ultimately, in this case, there must have been a change in the negative where we decrease some of that sub-pop or our attendance rate that decreased our overall state funding.
Okay, and only because I'm comparing these, so on the first page, page 2, that 1 million, that 1.1 million, that's that same 1.1 million right here, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm new at the budget, first year, first timer rookie, so, but that's all I have for right now. Thank you, I appreciate your time. Yes, sir.
Mrs. Flores?
Yes.
Mrs. Flores?
Yes, and possibly Ms. Lopez I'll be asking this. On page 7, a lot of my questions were answered already after I asked. This proposed employee 2% salary increase on page 7. When you have total staff, those are the 1,389. That's everyone that is employed in this district.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Also, you talked about the market median, and then you're adjusting salaries based on that to be competitive with other districts in Bexar County. How far off are we?
We discussed that this past week with Ms. Cadena. With all of the pay categories, we are good with the market median. We are being competitive with the Bexar County school districts. when it comes to teachers, everybody's doing the waiting game to see who's going to give an increase, what they're going to give. Some districts wait to the last minute because they want to see what their neighbors are doing, and they'll pay an extra $100 for, or they'll pay, it just depends on what their budgets can afford. Right now, I believe we're number 6, is that correct, Representative, when it came to school teacher salary. So we know we've got some work that we still need to do there.
One thing that we noticed, first of all, we've gained a lot of ground just the last few years.
Yes.
We were way behind, but we've gained a lot of ground on that. One thing that we've noticed, and I think our TASB consultant shared this with us, ordinarily when we do the 2 or 3% increase, that would catch us up if the others weren't moving. See, it was kind of like we're like 1 year behind, if you would. Whenever we get the opportunity, we're going to have to most likely do a big jump, 5 or 6%. And I think at that point, we become real competitive at that point. The school district that seems to be at the top is Southwest.
Yes.
For their salaries. But I really believe that it's possible to catch up, but it's going to require a major jump at least one time to be able to do that.
And I was alluding to that because we want to attract good teachers. We don't want South San to be one of the last districts where they will come and interview because they were not picked up by the top 5 districts that are paying more. So if we're wanting to attract good teachers to meet our goals in reading, meet our goals in math, meet our goal number 1 in college ready, getting our students there, then we need to attract. And salaries is really, one of those. But all our employees need to have rewarded as well through the race. And that's why I was asking for the total, if that's everyone. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Squire, I promise this is my last question. Under the impact of school consolidation or savings, I think Ms. Flores was asking me questions on the teachers. And you've listed 4.5 million. Is that actually a savings?
No, so part of it is where we will be spending the additional funds that we're able to identify through the consolidation as well through budget cuts. The 2.4 million is essentially additional expenses the district incurs because we decide to staff our secondary, excuse me, at a level of 25-to-1 ratio versus a 30-to-1 ratio, which again, based on our overall deficit in workshop 2, could have been a reality without other decisions that made. So essentially, we are spending an additional $2 million because of our class size.
I guess the heading says savings, and I don't think it's savings.
Well, it's the impact of these savings.
That's all I have.
I have a follow-up to that real quick, if you allow. Are you saying that last year, this time, we were $2 million less and our classrooms were more full at the secondary level?
No, we're not saying that.
Okay.
We're not saying that.
So we're just maintaining our 25-to-1?
What we're saying is that based on the, financial health of the district at this point, as we start building the budget and knowing the reduction in enrollment, therefore reduction in state revenue and so forth, that we were going to have to make some tough decisions, such as staffing at 30-to-1, if we did not identify some savings, where we could redirect money. The result of consolidation is being able to redirect some of that 3.9 million that consolidation saved, basically, partly into keeping smaller class sizes at the secondary, 25-to-1. Linda, what have we been using in the past for secondary? 27-to-1 or about 27-to-1?
27.
We've been using, I believe, about 27-to-1 in the past, and now we're using 25-to-1. But had we not had a $3.9 million savings, we may be looking at increasing that 27-to-1 to 30-to-1. So it allows us to maintain smaller classes at the secondary.
Okay, so, and that's what I thought you were gonna say. My follow-up to that is that if we consolidated schools with the specific purpose that we were gonna put that money back into the classrooms, programs, and try to keep our class size down,
Right.
then we're still at a deficit right now in the budget. And I just hope that the cuts do not come in these areas.
That is correct.
So let's work hard on that.
No, we agree, you know. Now, I'll be honest with you, until we get the picture from the state on state revenue, we'll just have to wait to see where we're at, you know. If the state produces some additional revenue, you know, right now we stand at about a $2.3 million deficit. You know, unless the state gives us zero, I have a feeling they're going to provide at least that amount of money so that we can basically not have to do any more cuts, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Okay.
Madam Board President, just to answer Mr. Ibarra's question, our deadline to approve the budget is August 31. Our deadline to approve the tax rate is September 30th, and we should have the appraisal, or the tax roll from the appraisal district by July 25th. Should, sometimes that's late.
July 25th?
Yes.
I have a question.
So
I'm sorry, and it's to council, I guess, I'm sorry. If we're going to start school earlier, does the budget need to be approved before school starts?
So to answer that question, the month of August will still be funded by the current year budget. So the funds that are still available in this year's budget will be provided to them to make any expenditures that they need for the start of the school year. To comment on the deadlines, the one thing to keep in mind is that we have posting requirements. So we can't post until we get the approval of the board that, you know, the tax rate. So the other thing we'll be covering in the next workshop is our debt service fund, which we'll present to y'all as far as where we stand, whether it'll take an increase of tax rate or not, or whether we want, if we fall short of paying our principal and interest, we can also decide to use fund balance to pay for that shortage, depending on how small or large. So we'll have to determine the tax rate and then the advertising requirement. So I want to say it's 2 weeks requirement to advertise. So if we plan on an earlier date, then we would probably have to have an additional workshop sooner in July to make those decisions so we can post and then bring it at the end of July or beginning of August.
So based on that, I mean, is anybody on the board opposed to having meetings in July? I know it's summer break, but...
We already just closed the first week of July. As far as the administration building, shut down the district, the first week of July, the rest of that we're here.
Okay, board members, are there any other comments, concerns, or questions? Okay, this concludes the meeting. Do I hear a motion for adjournment? Motion adjourned. Do I hear a second? So, Mrs. Flores motion, Mr. Ibarra seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. The meeting has adjourned. It is 8:57.
First minute,